Hi, and welcome to the Digital Digging YouTube channel. In this video, we're taking a closer look at the skinning community, starting with a review of the work of the highly talented TheOmega89. There's a selection of his work to look at while we're chatting, and you can find links to all the resources featured in the video in the description box below. So without further ado, we'll get started.
So, thank you so much for the invitation to speak on your channel.
My pleasure, absolutely.
My name is Michael, TheOmega89 in-game, and I've been a skinner for a little, close to a year and a half now. I started in late May of 2014, and quite honestly, the reason that I wanted to do this was a lot of people don't know that we're out there, and a lot of people don't have a good idea of the work that we put in and the dedication that a lot of skinners put into the skins that they're working on. So for me, research is a lot of the fun that I have in making the skins. And one of the things that I have had a lot of success with that I want to encourage other skinners and just a lot of people who are interested in military aviation in general to do is to reach out directly to sources. So a lot of times when you're doing research online, you'll come across a site about the F-86 Sabre or the P-51 Mustang, and you can tell that the person who published this has a wealth of information and a wealth of knowledge and is excited about it, but it doesn't give you the right angle or exactly the right piece of information that you're looking for to do that skin. So a lot of people just leave it there, and one thing that I really want to encourage is sending an email to the person who published it, calling them. I've talked to quite a few of the veterans who actually flew the aircraft that I've skinned. I've talked to quite a few of the maintenance crews, their families. Unfortunately, a lot of these individuals have passed away. So I've reached out to their families. I've reached out to restoration organizations and museums who've worked with these squadrons or with these aircraft. And in general, the response is really positive. You'll get people who, just haven't had a lot of interest in their military service. So as a relative to a lot of these veterans, as a younger individual having all of this interest in calling, they are typically so forthcoming and so gracious, and the stories that you get and the original pictures and documents from their time in service are just incredible resources. So that's one side of it. And the other is I try to get the actual blueprints and manuals from the production of the aircraft. So contacting the records divisions of restoration organizations or museums. And as someone who primarily skins United States and British aircraft, I recognize that the records there are much more complete than they would be, for instance, for the Imperial Japanese Navy or, even for the Soviets to a large extent. But it's still, to send that email, to make the call, is a step that I think
I guess, you've got nothing to lose. So you go to primary sources like maintenance crews and pilots and get it firsthand. That's you're contributing to the heritage record quite significantly there, because with the best will in the world, nobody's getting younger, and if in 30 years' time, you're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And actually, in speaking to another skinner you might know, Mighty Arrow, a couple weeks ago.
I've come across him, certainly.
We had, of course. For anyone listening, I encourage you to check out his page. Phenomenally detailed skinner, and a really good guy. But one of the things we discussed was there's some weight that I think we feel to be the stewards of history to a certain extent. Now, I should preface this by saying I do not think my skins are perfect. I'm always finding things on my skins that are wrong, that I changed, that, there's a lot of conflicting sources of information, even with the best records out there. And, we can only do our best, but a lot of this information is sort of being scattered to the winds as time goes on. So I don't want to encourage anyone to look at one of my skins and say, okay, this is a perfect representation of what it looked like during this period. But if it can challenge someone to do more research, if it can be a nexus of information in general for a squadron or a pilot or just the era, then that's really exciting for me. To give you an example on my most recent Skyraider of the VA-65 Squadron Marines, there are two red banners on the port side of the cockpit representing battle efficiency awards, and those are efficiency awards for that squadron that were that this squadron received in the previous 7 months. So that piece of information can contribute to if you're researching that squadron or just interested in the history. And there are little things like that, from something obvious like the squadron markings to the weathering to damage on a tail hook. And all of these things are, contribute to the history that we're trying to, in a certain sense, resurrect.
Absolutely. I mean, there's, that's a particularly impressive skin. The heat damage is beautifully done, but there's also salt residue on the props.
Yeah, so this is kind of a fun example of some of the steps that I take in research and just creating a skin. So as part of the maintenance records that I received for this aircraft and this squadron, this was a composite squadron, so not all of the aircraft in this were the same type. We had AD2s, AD4 Skyraiders, AD4Ns, and as part of the maintenance records for this particular aircraft, it was noted that there was significant weather on the way from California, where it was originally loaded onto the carrier, to the Sea of Japan, and there was basically wash over the deck and significant salt water staining on the propeller. Now, I couldn't find any pictures of what this actually looked like, so eventually I got a piece of scrap aluminum, basically, and spray painted it with a black epoxy coating that's very similar to the coating that was on the actual prop, then sprayed it with salt water, basically, and left it on my windowsill for about a week and a half. And the effect that was created is reflected in the skin that you can see there. There are a lot of little things like that.
I mean, that's an incredible amount of detail. I mean, how did you get it, as it were, off the aluminium and into the computer? Did you take images?
No, I mean, a lot of it is there's no specific method to create a certain effect. So it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of playing around with it. A lot of the time, the great example that I think of is Edison being asked, how did you, he had over 2,000 failed attempts, I believe it was, to create a light bulb. He was asked, well, how did you keep going? You had failed to make a light, or you had failed 2,000 times, whatever it was. And he said, no, I just found 2,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And a lot of the strategies that you try might not create the effect that you want, but might do something else. So you keep those in the back of your head.
Okay. No, that makes sense, yeah.
The next time you're trying to create a different effect, trying to create, soot, staining, whatever you're trying to do. So it's all, the more you work on it, you just accumulate a body of knowledge that allows you to improve your skins. And even looking back, a couple months at the skins I was doing, now I say, what the hell was I thinking? And
because you've improved over those 2 months.
Yeah, and that's one of the exciting things about skinning. I think that this community is new in a lot of ways, and there's always things that we can be learning. So I'm always learning from my other skinners. I'm always checking out what they're doing and what strategies they have to produce certain effects. So it's nice that it's always a challenge. And there's always something new, and there's always improvement to be done.
Excellent. And you mentioned that in your work you travel a lot, so you actually get to speak to people face to face and take reference images of the actual aircraft.
Yeah, I'm privileged in that I have the opportunity to travel quite a bit for business, and just in my life in general. And I do my best to coordinate those trips with trips to museums and meeting with individuals who have information or are primary sources, as you had mentioned. So I've been to give you an example, to the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. I've been to the USS Essex Museum out in California. And meeting with a lot of these people is, they're so excited to put the information out there, because the skins really bring a lot of this to a much wider audience. So I would encourage anyone out there, if you're interested, just to take those opportunities. There's always cool things where you want to visit. There's always cool information. You're not going to know when you need it even. I would, try to be as courteous as you can. I, as a funny anecdote, have actually been kicked out of a museum for climbing under an F9F Panther to get photos of the undercarriage. I would not recommend that at all.
Yeah, as someone that's worked in a museum, people can be quite possessive about the exhibits. I wouldn't recommend doing that either. That's quite a high bar to entry. Do you really need to go into that level of detail to start skinning, or?
Absolutely not, and I didn't. I leave a lot of my old skins up, and you feel free to take a look at them in comparison to what I'm working on now, and you'll see that hopefully you'll see anyway that I've come a long way and improved. But I think in a year I'll look back at the skins I'm doing now and probably think the same thing. So
right.
I encourage, if you're interested in it, if you have an artistic edge, if you have a favorite plane and you're just like, you know what, no one's made a skin that looks like this. I want to fly this plane for whatever reason. Maybe, someone in your family flew it. Maybe it's just your favorite because of the history. Try it out. I think, the more skinners that we get is just healthy for the community. And I would love to see it.
So that's a very good point. So even if you're housebound and penniless, if you join in with the skinning community, then there will be resources open to you. Is that correct?
Absolutely. If you're interested in it, reach out to me. So many of us are willing to help, willing to share what we know, and willing to learn from you. I've learned things from skinners that, in my arrogance, I would immediately consider not to be up to my level. Har, har, har. They might bring something to the table that I'd never considered. A resource, research strategy, a way to develop an effect in Photoshop or whatever else. So just having more people to learn from is, I think, always valuable.
It sounds like an excellent community. I know it produces splendid work, and it's all for the love of it, isn't it? There's no recompense, as far as I know.
Yeah, there's
no financial recompense.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no payment. There's no payment that you should expect. Gaijin has a revenue share system for a couple skins in game. I think that's cool, but at the end of the day, you're not getting paid for what you're doing. You're doing it because you like it. I enjoy doing this because I like military aircraft. I think they're really interesting. I've always been a fan, and it's an artistic challenge. So much of it is not just regurgitating something onto the Photoshop template. Okay, to give you an idea of how I want to do this, to use the example of my my VA-65 Squadron Skyraider again.
Yeah.
The blue color that you see, that is the base blue of that Skyraider. Now, I have the actual paint makeup that was used to paint the Skyraider that the Navy used. I can mathematically convert that into hex and input it into Photoshop, and that will be rendered into game. But there isn't an exact relationship there. The game doesn't render colors that perfectly, and that's just the nature of the graphic engine and everything else that's going on. So a lot of it is just experimenting to see what looks right. There's also sun bleaching and the just general weathering of those colors. So even before you get to the soot and the staining and the dust and the rusting on the rivets and everything like that, just looking at the blue color, it's not as easy as 1 to 1 to 1. If you get this piece of information, then everything falls into place. And that's one of the things that's exciting about it. And there is so much artistic ability, and there is so much open to interpretation beyond, this piece of livery goes here, and once I recreate this insignia or whatever else, then I can just put it on the plane and it's good to go.
Okay, well, don't forget that part 2 of that interview will be up in the next few days, so if you like what you've heard so far, don't forget to subscribe. Cheerio, chaps, and I hope to see you for that one. Bye-bye.